Cloud Identity and Access Management. Let's go ahead and talk about Cloud IAM and just realize a few things here. The first thing is that IAM is really a little bit more complex than it sounds. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of little details that we're going to have to just learn and memorize. So Cloud IAM is really about letting you, as a user, developer, architect, whatever your role is, to be able to go in to Google Cloud and present basically your users access to resources in a granular manner. Now, Cloud IAM allows you to present, as well as part of that, Google's best practice, which is the principle of least privilege, basically granting only what the user needs. Now, one of the things I want to point out here is throughout the course, we're going to be talking a lot about organizations. And an organization is really a top-level domain. In other words, you're going to have G Suite or Cloud Identity as part of your hierarchy. Now, do you need to have an organization to use in Google Cloud? No, you don't. It's a nice option, especially if you're using G Suite or Cloud Identity. It gives you that additional layer of granularity. Now, when it comes to projects and folders, we have to realize that folders are part of IAM. It allows us to grant access to a folder of resources and allows us to basically have these resources take on the same roles and permissions between projects as one of the benefits. Now, this is really nice because you don't have to recreate the wheel for each project. Let's say you need to give one developer access to a specific project temporarily, and that user isn't going to need access after 3 months. Instead of having to go and reproduce the wheel and then delete the wheel later, we just use folders. That's just one little benefit of folders. And then a project. We all are familiar with projects by now, hopefully. But when it comes to IAM, there's, a lot of moving parts. So I think over here, where is it? Right there. I have 3 terms. A member is going to be pretty much a Google account. It's going to be a Google group, G Suite, Cloud Identity. It's basically someone accessing resources. Now, it could also be a service account as well, so we have to pay attention to that as well. A role is a collection of permissions, and a policy is what binds members to a role. So, for example, if we wanted to define Joe Schmuckatelli as a developer and bind him to a certain level of access, then we can. We create a policy and attach it to that resource. Really, that simple. Now, when it comes to service accounts, we want to be aware that a service account we're going to want to set up probably for our services or apps to be able to access other resources. So we do need to consider authenticating them. And then a Google group. Now, Google groups confuse a lot of people, to be honest. And a Google group is basically a collection of Google accounts and service accounts. And we could basically create a group with a unique email that is associated with that group. For example, the company A, companya.com dev group, something that is basically part of that domain to identify that Google group as a specific usage or use case or application, whatever you want to use. It's just a way to use for convenience, and that's really the thing. What's nice though is that when we change a policy that applies to the whole user group. So if I have, user 1, user 2, user 3, let's say I have 6 users in a group. What I could do here is I simply go over here, I add them to the group, and then I would do this. I would create specific policies and bind them to the group. So if I give App Engine access to the group, then everyone in that group gets the same level of access. That's really the purpose. And as developers, we really should know this because it could definitely make your life easier. Instead of having to worry about the permissions on the back end, they're already built in pretty much into Google Cloud. It's just we got to utilize them. And then as far as cloud identity and all these other services that are out there, we're going to cover G Suite and cloud identity more in detail. I think the main focus of this little whiteboard was just to start to bring things together. And again, we need to realize too and let me change my color here so it's easy to see. We need to realize too that we can create a policy, let's say, and this policy, let's just say this is a policy, we could have this policy be available or be utilized. And when I say policy, I'm saying a cloud IAM policy, and basically have it represented as an object. And this object we could bind to members of a group to a role. So basically, again, we want to realize that the way we tie in this policy could be dependent, though, on what we're using and how we're going to deploy our life cycles in G Suite or cloud identity. And then lastly, before we move on to the next part of the course, we want to just realize that projects do have some unique use cases as well. And we could consider a project, of course, a sandbox of resources in Google Cloud. And we also know, for example, and we'll talk more about this when we get over to the networking part, is we could deploy multiple VPCs as part of a project. And this gives us additional capability. So for example, if I deploy resources, let's say, in a specific geo or for a specific app, I'm effectively isolating this application in this project and isolating this one from a network perspective as well. So there's just so many moving parts here to know. So I hope this started bringing together a few things that we're going to want to absolutely know for this exam, but pretty much any Google exam. And it's just about bringing together all of these little details. It's about the IAM policy. It's about the organization or the folder or the project and how everything is inherited from basically a hierarchy standpoint. So let's go ahead and move on to the next module.